Good afternoon, everyone who is online and have called in. Each year for 6 years, we have been coordinating with the natural resource fairs on the Navajo Nation but due to the coronavirus, this year we have resorted to virtual communications. Our webinar today is 5 of 6 webinars for the Natural Resource Fair, and our presenter today is Bryan Neztsosie. He's the Research and Outreach Coordinator with the Land Grants Office at the Nate College in Saheli, Arizona. The Land Grants Office has been a partner since the Native American Producer Success Project began in 2013. We have had numerous events working together with the Land Grants Office staff. They are a dedicated crew improving farming and ranching while working with many producers on the Navajo Nation. Our session today is one of many trainings they provide. Our topic is resource development. Be informed on September 29 and 30 at the same time, 1:30, we will be covering 2 more topics, cover crop and noxious and invasive species. Before I turn the presentation over to Bryan, I would like to share information about our program. The Arizona Native American Producer Success Project 7 is a collaborative effort between Developing Innovation in Navajo Education, Inc. is a nonprofit organization, New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service, the Nate College Land Grant Office are all partners to our project. Our project is also funded by the USDA Office of Partnership and Public Engagement, Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers program. The goal of the Arizona Project 7 is to increase the profitability and long-term sustainability of Navajo farmers and ranchers. To achieve this goal, activities in 4 key areas are being undertaken: to improve Navajo farm and ranch operations, to increase Navajo farmer-rancher knowledge of and access to available programs and technical assistance provided by the United States Department of Agriculture, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Navajo Nation, the New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service, the Nate College Land Grant Office, and others, to also facilitate Navajo farmer-rancher use of USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service, Farm Service Agency, and Risk Management Agency programs, to strengthen the organizational capacity of the Navajo Farmer-Rancher Congress to address current and future needs of Navajo farmers and ranchers. The Native American Producer Success Project contact information is myself, Sadie Lister, Field Coordinator. My cell number is 928-637-5633. And then my coworker, Sharon Sandman, she's the Assistant Field Coordinator, and you can reach her at cell number 505-427-4262. And Bryan, I'm gonna put you as host so you can begin.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I am Bryan Neztsosie. I work for the Nate College Land Grant Office. I've worked here for a number of years as a research coordinator and outreach coordinator as well. With the Nate College Land Grant Office, my plans are so I'm glad to see everybody. So what I'm going to talk about is the Navajo Nation, or it's a conservation plan. And it's on resource development. So, as many producers throughout the Navajo Nation, they have concerns, resource concerns. Can be about water, wind, soil amendment. And if we go into agriculture, what type of soil amendments do I add? Do I use no-till? If they are using their area, their range for livestock, what kind of grass do I need for my animals? It'll vary from cattle to sheep to horses. Other resource concerns are, let's say, if they have an encroachment of juniper, pinon are those concerns. And also weeds are in this category as well, because if we look at the herd health from the management side, what weeds or what plants are toxic to livestock, to cattle, to horses, to sheep, to goats. Um, Other things too is that they also share the range with the wildlife. So we have deer, we have elk, um, in some cases wild horses, wild cattle. So it'll vary, but a lot of these concerns have come from producers. What can I do to, let's say, prevent water erosion? What can I do to prevent wind erosion to their fields, to their home, to where their animals graze? What kind of soil do I have? So we have a lot of questions. If it comes from a producer who has an acreage, they want to grow crops. What kind of crops do they want to grow? Is it for human consumption or is it for livestock consumption? Then it goes back into what soil amendments. So many things come into play. So I always like to start off everybody with like a blank sheet of paper, or imagine what area they want to work on, if it's a range, if it's a farmland. So there's always resources available. I'll tell everybody a quick story. We went out to see one producer in New Mexico, and he had no trees available to him. There was no pinon, no juniper. The only trees he did have were in small little brushes, kind of like this tree right here. Or where it says tree on my PowerPoint presentation, he probably had little shrubs like that. So that's all he had available to him. And then as far as rocks, he had really tiny rocks, probably the size of dimes, and the largest one was probably about the size of a quarter. So we needed some of these materials for what he wanted to do. But just look at this slide right here. There are resources available. One is that we can use the trees in the background. We can cut off the limbs for erosion control. It also provides to prevent wildfires, which do occur. And also, you can see all these different types of, these grasses are dormant, but we also have some other type of vegetation out there. Most of it, from just looking at it right now, they're not consumable. Like most of the animals, like say by cattle or by sheep, they'll probably be browsed a little bit, but overall they probably won't be eating them. What they're going to be going after is more of the native grass. But we have the vegetation that's on there. It's keeping the soil down, so we're already preventing wind erosion, water erosion right there. As you can tell, there's a road that goes in between there, but then you have another on the upper left corner. There's actually a main road that is there. So those are some of the things that we'll encounter on some of these rangelands. So what resources are available out there? So we have branches, we have trees, we have rocks, we have dead stands, trees that might have been killed from something, bark beetles, or they were cut down. We have brushes to make earthen dams. And then looking at the different soil types that are out there. This soil here, this is actually taken in New Mexico at the Corona Ranch, New Mexico State's Corona Ranch. And it's a very sandy soil. So the water will infiltrate rather quickly. So that's going to determine what kind of plants can grow in this environment. Since it's very sandy, there might be some salt deposits. So these are some underlying questions that we'll also ask our producers. And then what else do the producers have? Of course, there's this rangeland here, but let's take it back to their home. What resources do they have there? Do they have cattle? Do they have horses? So there's going to be some manure that's going to come from those animals. But also, if they have a field, how many acres do they have? What's the soil type? What kind of crops do they plant? And what kind of crops do they plant? And what crops do they want to plant? Those are two different things. Because not all areas can grow alfalfa, is one example. they do not have the water capacity to grow alfalfa hay. So they might have to go to a different type of crop. The other thing I always ask of our producers is look at your range. Where do the animals travel throughout the year? Because the livestock, the cattle, and then sheep will travel to different areas throughout the year for different types of vegetation. It can be cool season grasses, can be warm season grasses. And then also, let's say at their home, if they want to start a garden, a backyard garden, or they have a garden, they want to expand into a field type of an area, or do they want to put in a greenhouse? So I always like to ask them, draw out the map. If it's of your home, if it's of your ranch, where does the wind come from? Because I do not live in their area. I'm not from in Mexico, where the wind might come at southwestern direction during the summer, and then from the winter it might come from more of the northern area. So all of these have a role. Do they have a creek, a perennial spring, a stream? Do they have access to this type of water or wells in their area? And then also, when it rains, where does the water come from? Are they next to a creek, a ditch? So I always have them draw this out. That way it gives me a visual when I have to advise or help develop these plans and where to focus. And we'll refer back to the goals, which will go back to the conservation plan. Do they want to prevent wind erosion? Do they want to prevent soil erosion? And in some of these areas, they will primarily focus on maybe this creek or this wash that's cutting into their field, cutting into their house, or reducing some of their rangeland. So I will always ask these types of questions. This next slide here is, like as I was saying, about their home. They might not have trees if they want to prevent wind erosion, but this same picture can apply back to their field. It's not specifically to a home, but it's just an example. Is which direction does the wind come from? Do they have a stock pond? Are they pumping out of this water holding pond to irrigate their field with? Is it for their livestock? So there's a number of things that can come into play. Where is their road? If it is of a field, with going back to, like, say, the Food Modernization Act, where are their facilities for them to go to the restroom while they're out there tending their field? Where does the road come from? Do they have good road access? If it's a gravel road, do they spray down the road when it gets too dusty? And that way it doesn't go onto their crops. Water access, is it treated
Bryan,
water? Is it stream?
I have a question. Are you going through your slides now, or are you?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not showing on our side that you're going through the slides.
Really? I have them up on the Zoom and it says stop share, but I should be sharing.
Okay, it might be
Let me try it again.
It might just be my side with the internet signal. But go ahead and try.
I'm not sure, but let me try sharing again.
Okay.
Can you guys see my slides, Michael, Sharon?
We can see the slide,
Bryan,
but you're on the first one.
The first
Right.
one, but not the rest.
Okay.
It's all on the side.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Okay, now we can see it.
I was on a roll, guys. I was doing good.
I know. Sorry.
How much did you hear?
We heard a lot, but we heard a lot, but we just didn't know which slide you were going to because it stayed on the first slide all the way through. But you were at a part where.
No worries.
Okay.
The house. Okay. So just going back to this slide, everybody has resources. it can be the trees in the background. Or it's going to be rocks. In one scenario, actually, there was a producer who didn't have any trees. But besides that, we were thinking outside the box, and then he had access to pallets. So we were able to help him develop a plan to create a dam to prevent water erosion and soil erosion. So we didn't have trees, so we got a little bit outside that box, and we went to use the pallets. So we developed something. So going back to livestock producers or range producers, is that they're going to have probably livestock. They're going to have horses, they're going to have cattle, sheep, but then they're also going to have the waste. They're going to have manure. So this, in return, if they're producing hay, forage for their animals, can be used in their field, and it's something that they don't have to buy. Can refer to a number of institutions like NMSU, Utah State, Colorado State, U of A in Arizona, where they can develop a plan to compost the manure, and then make it. If it's going to be for human consumption, then there's also additional guidelines for that, but that can be developed from there. One other thing I will notify our producers with, or talk to our producers with, is this right here of like how it all applies, because a lot of our producers don't have, I'm not gonna say don't have access, but they have access to, let's say, fertilizers. They can become expensive depending on which one, if it's liquid, if it's granule, or even knowing what nutrients they're missing from their soil. So we always recommend get a soil sample from their field, get it tested, see what's missing. A lot of the crops that they want to grow will be corn, squash, and melon. Those are the big three on the reservation. So there might be nitrogen deficiencies in their soil, or it could be something else. It could be lime, it could be phosphorus. So there's a number of things. But just going through this, I can physically show them that there are microorganisms in the soil right here, and then also preventing that tillage. You don't have to completely plow your field. You can just plant back over it. You can dist it. If you do complete land leveling of your field, and then it's going to take a while for that land to come back in as its original state. So crop rotations are good, where they can provide nutrients for the microorganisms. If it's for a field, they could use compost or manure. And again, it's going to go back to what do they want to plant. If we're going to be talking about a rangeland, maybe there's already perennial grass there, but if they're rehabilitating an area, it's probably going to be moving all of the animals off, livestock, cattle, horses, sheep from the area, and then have the land slowly come back and start to regrow again. The other thing I always talk about in this presentation is soil types. Not every soil, let's say across the reservation, is the same. Sadie, I believe you guys have a little bit more sandy area. Sharon, I believe you guys have a little bit more clay in your area. So when we are talking about agriculture, when the soil reacts to water, to either irrigation or if it rains, that soil is going to act differently within those two areas. So always knowing what kind of soil you have in your field, on your range, is always good. It affects the plants differently also, cultivated plants. So they're going to react all differently. And then going back to one of my earlier examples of doing composting, making sure that there's enough of what is called as the greens, the browns, making sure it has water, and then that this is turned. So if you set it up takes approximately, if you do it correctly and have all of the ingredients and the time, roughly you can get a good compost in 3 months. But if you're adding fresh manure and stuff like that, it's going to be a little bit longer if you're going to be following a program. And so for the Food Modernization Act, as long as it's above 120 days out, before you apply it to any type of vegetable that's going to be consumed by a person, you're fine there. But you would also record that and say, this is the program that I'm following from this university. Other thing that I will also talk about is water. Where is your water coming from? Is it from a perennial spring? Is it just from the runoff that comes from the mountain or from the rangeland? And you want to plant trees to hold down the water or even use the water in certain to grow other crops. So this is this one option that I see and that I like. That can be done. It just requires quite a bit of effort on as far as producers side to create these little earthen dams, plant the type of tree. And one thing I'll point out about the trees, if you can get trees that are kind of grown in the region, they have a more good chance of surviving. If we go to like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, just to name two of the two box stores, those trees sometimes won't survive because they're not acclimated to our area. They might require more water. So going back to the rangeland, if the producers are concerned about weeds or noxious weeds, encroachment of juniper, encroachment of pinon, I'm trying to remember this picture here. I don't believe we could ride a horse through there. You could walk through it, but you almost have to kind of bend over just to get through there. Is that one of the producers' concerns? And then what can they do to open up this slide right here, this area, to more grasses? So there's a number of programs, number of treatments. Do they have a lot of Russian olive, tamarisk, sagebrush in their range? Do they notice an increase of noxious weeds? Also weeds that might be poisonous to their animals. So if the producers have pictures, those are always good. If they have access to a map, maybe not a topographical map, maybe a satellite map to show us, okay, it's starting in this area, which might be next to a road, which might be next to an animal trail or a cattle trail or horse trail. So those are the things that will also come up. It's trying to reduce the spread of those weeds. One of them is pretty effective, is actually to go out there and collect the flowering plants themselves. When they're flowering, just remove the buds and then put those in the bag and then have them, and also get rid of that one too. I will use Russian thistle as an example. It's good for livestock. Cows like to eat it, but it can become very aggressive and infestive. So the best one that I've seen is to where the flower is in full blossom. It's really pink, or not purple. It's very purple. It's ready to start seeding, and you remove the head. You put it in the bag, and you leave it out in the sun for 2 days. And at that point, the seeds are non-viable because it's too hot for them to survive. The root and the stem and the leaves are still there, but the seeds have been prevented from being distributed by the wind, by livestock coming through, by wildlife coming through. So that's one of the more effective methods rather than spraying. Some of our producers might want to have their field sprayed, but they can't afford the herbicides, or they miss the trainings and stuff like that. So that's one of the options that the producers themselves can become proactive. For this picture right here, they can go there and do a cut. If they're on the Navajo Nation, they would have to apply for a permit and then pay a fee, I believe, for the tree that cut. There are some stipulations to where they can prevent forest fires with this treatment, so it could be waived, but just a long process to get it approved if it's under conservation plan. The other thing that they will probably look at in their conservation plan is livestock. Wait, I think we have a question. I'm going to pause to see what questions are there. I thought I saw a chat thing come up. Okay, but if they're on a rangeland, they're going to be grazing lands. Can be grazing livestock, can be horses, cattle, goats, sheep, llamas. But one thing I would also take into consideration is that they require feed, but they also require water. Where is their nearest watering source? Is it 10 miles down the road? Is this the only source? And does the producer have to haul water back and forth? During the summer months, depending if the cow is pregnant or not, she can consume up to 20 gallons of water per day. If that's if the cow is pregnant. If she's not, it's going to be around 14 gallons. And then for sheep and goats, roughly about the same, 1 to 4 gallons, depending on if they're pregnant. And then a horse is going to be from 10 to 20 gallons of water per day. And then a goat would still be the same, 1 to 4 gallons of water per day. Where is all this water coming from that they would need to provide for their animals? Do they have to travel? One of my examples is 10 miles down the road. Is it a dirt road? If it gets muddy, how much water would they have to have on hand to provide to all of their animals? And then the other thing that I always ask is when they're going to do a lot of this work, I'm going to go back to this slide on the rangeland. To remove these trees, do they have a workforce that has chainsaws, that has heavy equipment to remove the trees, chip them, cut them up, to limb them? What is their workforce going to be? Is it just them? Is it just the producer who's going to do all of this work while they have to haul water for their animals? So equipment. What equipment do they have available? If they're a farmer, producer, do they have the tractor? Do they have the land rippers, the discs, the planters to plant their produce? Or are they all doing it by hand? If they're going to be pretty aggressive and start removing Russian olives, do they have access to a backhoe? Maybe one of their neighbors? So there's a number of things that come into play when talking about their conservation plan and their resource development. Another opportunity is to build earthen dams, holding ponds to harvest the rainwater, harvest the snowmelt. That way it infiltrates into the ground, replenishes the aquifer, which will then allow other plants to start growing. So a number of opportunities. There are some areas that people have on their range that have old holding ponds, earthen dams that maybe have broke or they're completely filled up with sediment. What is their plan to take out that sediment or to rebuild that earthen dam? Or if they have a barn facility that they house their animals in, or even their home, can they harvest that rainwater and then they can use that for their livestock? Other opportunities are the hoop house. It's not as labor intensive as a greenhouse, but do they have an area where they can put it, access to water? They can use the rainwater harvesting system. Is it going to be this type of hoop house, or is it going to be another type? How much time and effort will they put into it? Also, we have a number of producers who do have hoop houses, who have greenhouses. They might be more elderly. They're not going to be bending over as much. So would they have a style of raised bed that's about waist high? Would they be using drip irrigation, or would they be manually watering? And what would they be planting? If you're in a hoop house, you're going to be extending your growing season. You can start a whole month earlier. You can end a whole month later. Growing carrots, blackberries, other fruit trees, strawberries. Here in Saley, we have a little strawberry patch inside our greenhouse. It does very well. Unfortunately, we never are able to sell them because we pretty much eat them as soon as we see them. And they are delicious, that we have to compete with the chipmunks before we get to see, or we get to have some. But those are some of the things. I'll mention the chipmunk, but if you're going to go selling them to the general public, then you have to have preventative measures preventing rodents from coming in the greenhouse. Another opportunity is, like say, if they have a well system, is installing a solar pump to provide water for their livestock and also the wildlife in the area. That way they don't have to haul water. If they're going to be preventing wind erosion, what if they live in a sandy area is going to be a little bit different, but what access or what's their plan to minimize wind erosion in their area? So one of the opportunities to prevent water erosion is, I came across this other document, and it seems to be very good because it's very manageable, because all of the resources that they would need are right there on their land. If they're going to be felling trees to open up the area for regrowth on their vegetations, and then they can use those logs. If they have rocks plentiful, they can use those also in the structure. So it's just not going to be one type of method. There are several things to do to prevent water erosion. Go to the next slide and show another one. These are just all water controlled methods to prevent water erosion, and they use nothing but rocks in this picture. Up here in this rock mush rundown, it's all rock, but they also added seeds in this form. So as the water comes down, it irrigates all of the seeds and activates the growth process, and then it's holding down the soil at the same time. So there's a lot of different methods that can be used. Again, it's going to be going back to the producers. How much time do they have available? How much time are they going to invest in their area to prevent all of these? The other big one is, again, water erosion, but they can start from game trails, livestock trails, or even roads. They might cut down a valley up the side of a hill, and then just the constant compaction can start to move the vegetation and then start the erosion process. So how can a lot of these be prevented? What are the steps to going through something like this? They do have workshops with this organization. I believe it's the Covera Coalition. So they actually have a number of workshops throughout the year to work on a ranch someplace in New Mexico, where they can get hands-on opportunity to learn this method or learn these methods. So Sadie, I am done right now, but I can turn it over if anybody has any questions. I see everybody's still awake.
I had a question in regards to cockaburs.
Sure.
Is that the same as the Russian thistle that you were talking about? I don't even recall them even flowering.
The cockleburs are a little bit different. They kind of have a leaf that looks like a spade. If you think of it, kind of like a shape of a shovel, but they're a little bit lower to the ground.
Okay.
The Russian thistle actually has a long, tall stem, and it has really sharp, spiny thorns all along it. And then on the top of it has a really giant purple flower.
Yeah.
But the same thing could be applied to the cockleburs. Unfortunately, there's two methods that could be used. One is using a spray to get rid of them. The other one is to manually go where they're growing and with a shovel and to remove them that way before they get into where they have the little thorns, where they're able to catch on to the life, to the sheep's wool.
Yeah.
So those are really the two options. There's goats won't eat it too much, but other than that, you'll mainly see them along the creek beds or along a stream bed.
Yeah.
That's where they'll be. And as they go down to drink or to browse in the area, they'll pick them up from there and then they'll deposit them somewhere else.
Does anyone else have questions? I like the pictures of the, slowing down the water and the trail of the water that come off the mountains and creeks. Those are good examples.
This one is a little bit more advanced. It has a little bit more engineering in it, but you can also do exactly the same thing with just branches.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're not going to stop the water. That's one thing I always try to tell remind everybody.
Right,
You're not going
right.
to stop the water. You're only going to slow it down. You just want it to slow down, to infiltrate into the ground.
Right.
Even with building the earthen dams, at least have a way for that water to escape. Because if you get a really good downpour, you're going to fill up that earthen dam. You're going to fill up that small rock dam, and it's going to break. So always have a way for the water to escape. Let me go back to this slide right here. So on this example here, as it starts to fill up, the water will escape through from the ends and go and up and fill the lower dam just below them. So it's always moving, but you're allowing that water to escape. And that's what I always try to get our producers to see, is that you want that water to escape. You're not going to stop all of it. Right. And if you can slow it down to where it infiltrates into the ground, even if they have a clay soil, even though if they have a sandy soil, just get that water to slow down and infiltrate into the ground. That's the main thing I always like to stress on this slide right here and the other example.
Sharon, do you have anything to add or comment?
I have a question on the composting. Bryan, have you tried the I think it's called a thermal composting?
Mm-hmm. We tried a number of them. Unfortunately, they all require a lot of work, because it's almost like having a full-time job, just composting.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna have to describe that one to me, Sharon.
Well, on Skeet's farm, south of Gallup, they are doing the thermal composting, and they have it like on a in a big satellite dish. Remember those old satellite dish? They started in that, and what they did was just add like they're raising pigs. So the pig manure, chicken manure, sheep manure, I think some horse manure, they're adding all of that to straw and just different types of stuff like weeds and little twigs, and they wet it down, and then they cover it, and then every time they turn it, it's probably like maybe like once a week, and then they'll add like vegetables, like all the vegetables, chicken, those egg shells, and they crushed them up and add that to the thermal composting. Then they cover it with a tarp, and it heats up at certain temperatures. Sometimes it can reach to 160 degrees. And then before it starts, combusting or, start to fire, they have to turn it. and then add more water to it and more straw and hay and just constantly adding these twigs and leaves and debris to it. And I think from what I heard when they gave a teaching on that, it takes like 120 days
Hmm.
for it to be ready. So it's just constantly testing the heat, and then every time it reaches at least 120 degrees, they try not to let it reach 160 because it starts a fire. So that's what I meant about, I think that's what they call it, thermal composting.
All of the composting methods will probably follow a similar thing. The main thing is keeping an eye on that temperature. The only difference is that if you're going to be adding new stuff, then you almost start that clock over again.
Oh, okay.
So if you're, just be cautious of weeds, especially weeds that have gone to seed.
Yeah.
Because if you, like say, have weeds in your backyard and you want to use it for composting, and
Yeah.
you do that, but it's gone to seed and you don't reach that 100-degree temperature
Yeah.
constantly, and then you apply that to your garden, you're going to be growing weeds, a lot of weeds. So always be
Oh,
cautious
okay.
of that because you
Yeah.
want that heat in there. All of the composting will all do the same thing. It'll all reach a certain heat. The trick is to keep that constant heat going. But if you add stuff like say your kitchen scraps, like say I don't know, potato peels, an apple, and to it, you're almost resetting that clock to where you're going to be allowing that period of to go from 120 days to probably 150 days before you get compost.
Okay.
But if you're just going to be using it for a field, for forage,
Yeah.
the difference between forage and human consumption, you really have to keep that constant temperature. You always have to be checking because you don't want something that could get somebody sick to go on the produce that they might eat. So you really have to watch it. You really have to follow probably a university plan,
Yeah.
and then follow let's say you're following that GAP program, and then you say,
Uh-huh.
okay, I'm following this method from this university because let's say in Mexico State, just because Michael's right there, and then okay, I'm following this plan because it's good for this region. It makes sense. It's not a plan that's out east to where
Yeah.
they get a little bit more moisture. This plan has been tailored for you, and you're following it. So you show them that plan. It goes into your record keeping book, and then your evaluator sees that and says, okay, this is sound.
Okay.
You can add too much weeds and not enough other material. You can overload this. Also a good rule of thumb is no meat, no dairy, no cheese, because the
Yeah.
last thing that you want is a skunk in your composting bin. Or crows. Another
Okay.
one thing is that you can attract certain types of other animals that you don't want.
Oh,
And you're not going to
okay.
get to that composting if there's a skunk living in there and you're just feeding him. So good rule of thumb, no meat, no dairy, no cheese. Oh, and no oil. I know some salad dressings have oil in them.
Yeah.
Be very cautious of that too, because you can also start bacteria that way, and that's the last
Uh-huh.
thing that you want. And you don't want it to think that you have a really great compost and you add it to your garden, but then that bacteria has an adverse effect and kind of kills everything. So really,
Uh-huh.
those are the good rules of thumb there. I think the other one for composting is like magazines that have that gloss to them that have where you can see
Oh,
the
yeah.
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
None of that, because it I don't remember if it becomes toxic or the ink might have something to do with that. It's been a while since I had a composting conversation.
Okay.
So Brian, I have
Yeah,
a question about your hoop house. Can you go to that slide?
sure. I got two, so
Oh, okay. Well, that one's fine. So it is, what's the material cost you have invested there, more or less?
Well, I'm gonna say it's going to depend because this PVC pipe right here, the
Yeah.
white one, is
Uh-huh.
20 foot, and with the 2 hurricanes that have hit the Louisiana area,
Yeah.
that'll affect the price. So I believe
Oh,
it was like $1 a foot, so it's like $20 per pipe.
well,
And then the plastic, since we don't have the same manufacturer, you have to outsource that. So I believe all in you're either looking at less than $2,000 or around $2,000 to $1,500, give or take.
uh-huh. Is this the same design that New Mexico State recommends? Is this a Del Jimenez type hoop house?
It is. We did make some differences, like say at the door, there used to be a plywood door there, but we got rid of
Yeah.
that and went with a straight plastic just
Yeah.
to prevent that shadowing from happening.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it follows the same designs, but we've made some upgrades, and
Okay.
because of our wind factor here,
Yeah, sure.
it'll follow the same thing, but just depending on the area. And even the plastic, I believe we've gone away from a sheer plastic to a woven plastic. If you can imagine, like a tarp. You know how it's woven?
Yes.
There's
Yes,
another
yes.
manufacturer that
Mhm.
makes a plastic that
Okay.
holds together a lot better, and that's the
Yeah.
one that we use, especially around the reservation. And that's the one that we recommend because I believe on a sheer plastic without that woven fabric in it, it only doesn't, because of the wind, it doesn't last that long. They say
Yeah.
5 years, but then it's more
Mhm.
like 3.
Mm-hmm. So what's the growing season, a normal growing season for that hoop house during the winter?
We've gotten away with growing carrots into, I want to say December, but it's probably more realistic, say November.
Uh-huh.
Once you really hit that deep freeze, like say when everything freezes around January, that's when stuff inside the hoop house really
Yeah.
doesn't make it. We have tried some experiment with a constant flow of water. So I experimented with 2 barrels or a barrel to where I put in a pump, and I kind of had it going like a shower constantly just to
Oh.
provide that humidity in there. And it lasted quite a while until that pump gave out. So there's some things that you can do and some things that just won't make
Okay,
sense.
sure. Yeah, it's location specific. Okay.
Yeah. So carrots grow well in there.
Are you
Lettuce and tomatoes. One more time.
No, I was going to ask, are you doing raised beds? Are you planting into the ground or both?
If we can, we prefer raised beds just because you can add the, like say, potting soil or some compost, but you can grow straight into the earth there. This one actually was for a school, but just like any construction project, they move a lot of earth back and forth. So you might get some areas to where you don't have as much nutrients as you like.
Sure.
So it's always best to add something, whether it's going to be that potting soil, composting. If they have a manure pile available, one of the teachers or somebody has that,
Okay.
we can add it to the soil and have it tilled in.
Okay.
The other thing too is the shade cloth and also the heat, because you can reach Phoenix temperatures in there pretty rapidly during the summer, and if you don't have it ventilated, you can also kill everything in there.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you have, I mean, how do you ventilate that? Do you roll up the sides of the plastic, or do you have an actual vent in the back, or?
A number of things that can be done. The quick and easiest one is open those doors.
Yeah.
But we've had bad experiences with the roll-up sides because of that sudden gust of wind. It can actually.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just take it up right away.
Yeah, it just takes it away.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have experimented with the vent. It's called a solar vent, but it opens the little vent thing. It heats up a little cylinder. I used to have an example here in my office. I took it out and actually used it. But once that cylinder heats up, then it opens that vent up, and then it allows that heat to escape. So we experimented with one on the doors, I believe.
Mhm.
And then just after wear and tear, we had to remove it. Did have a few interns a couple of years back who redid this, and the two vents are right there.
Yeah.
And once it
Okay.
heats up, it just opens, and then the heat goes out without having somebody physically be there and open the doors.
Mhm.
And it did fine for a number of years, just that the wind got to it after a while. The cylinders wore out after a few years, but
Mhm.
it's still here.
Okay. All
This
right.
greenhouse here is probably cost-wise is a lot more. It's probably in between $3,000 and $4,000 because it's raised up higher than this hoop house here.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So we have more headspace. It's a little bit wider. It's more sturdy because
Yeah.
this is the good thing and the bad thing about having engineering students that work with you is that they concreted all of the pillars, all the posts, all the way around. So
Uh-huh.
it's not going to move unless somebody hits the
Yeah.
truck. But
What's
it's very
where did you purchase this greenhouse? This design, is this an NRCS greenhouse or?
no. This is using the same example as this. New
Uh-huh.
Mexico State came out with another one a few years ago. I want to say 8, but it follows that same concept, and then
Okay.
it's just reinforcement of the entire structure. I know Del Jimenez had a grant for this particular one, but
Uh-huh.
they only earth filled the post. And so after one big heavy snow that we had, a lot of I believe there was like 8 greenhouses from Colorado and New Mexico and us, and they all imploded except for ours because the snow was being removed from the sides.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the tension under these hoops is a lot.
Yeah.
It's like 100. It's over 200 of what the pressure would be. So if
Okay.
Mm.
shade cloth is always good, especially during the hot summers.
Yeah.
Because a lot of plants will be light sensitive and heat sensitive. Tomatoes do really good in there.
So what is the dimensions on that particular hoop house we're looking at now? Is that still like the previous one, like 36 by, I'm not, 18 or something like that? It looks a little bit.
I want to say it's wider. I believe it's like 16 feet across is the rough estimate I can give right now. And then I believe it's like 40 feet. We had to add just a little bit more spacing in there. But you can really make it 100-foot long. But it's just going to go back to the sourcing the materials, the cost of lumber, screws, and other concrete.
Right.
So that'll be the factor there. And then also probably the heat also is how to get that heat out to keep the whatever crop you want in there to produce.
Yeah.
So that would be the trick there, because you would have to have fans, automatic watering system. So the cost would go up from there by a lot.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, sure. Okay.
it's easy enough to ventilate this greenhouse just by using those fans, or not those fans, those shutters.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was longer, we probably would have to have fans in there just to take out that the extra heat that's in there and cool it down.
Okay. Well,
There's
thanks.
no evaporative cooling on this system,
Mhm.
so it's just all done by those small vents opening and closing.
Well, we appreciate your presentation. Guys, I apologize. I got to jump off to another, another call. But go ahead and have a conversation with Bryan if you like. Bryan, thanks again, and thanks to Benita yesterday for her presentation. Hope to
No
get
problem.
over and see you guys soon. Are you able to move around? Are you guys moving around a little bit more? Or are you still tied down to your homes and your farms and ranches? Are you on campus at all?
I'm on campus right now just because of the internet. We just had to
Yeah.
get a quick screening, and then we're allowed to come on. But we're still trying to minimize. Unfortunately, a lot of our outreach has gone down just because of COVID.
Yeah, that's true for all of us. Sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So everybody's doing good.
That's
Okay, great. Everybody's healthy. Nobody,
That's
nobody.
good.
Yeah. How about your students? Are they back on campus? Are you doing any face-to-face classroom type instruction, or is it all online?
Most of the classes are online with the exception of science classes and math classes that will have a lab.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe they alternate on days, and then the maintenance will come through and clean those specific classrooms before the
Yeah.
next.
Okay.
So it's really small. Campus is officially closed to all community members,
Hmm.
and they're only letting students and staff on campus and into certain buildings. Before all the buildings were closed, at least now we're able to move around just a little bit more.
Is the cafeteria open?
Just to staff right now. It's not
Mhm.
open to the public.
And you have students in your dormitories?
I believe there's some here, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that seems to be pretty much the situation around the country. Okay, apologize, Sadie. Thank you so much for organizing and delivering the webinar. And again, Brian, good to see you, hear from you.
All right, it's good to see you too. Take care.
Say hello to our friends at Land Grant. Okay, I'm
Okay.
going to jump off, guys. We do have a webinar tomorrow at 1:30 with Jesse. Just put that on your calendar.
Okay,
Okay,
Michael.
see you guys. Take
Have a
care.
good
See you,
afternoon.
Michael.
See you, Michael.
Bye. Thank you.
Just one question on the manure.
Sure.
Brian, we have a pile of sheep manure that's probably aged now for 5 years. No, any other types of added stuff. I know it takes about 2 to 3 years for that to be able to get used in the field before you use it.
You can probably use it a lot sooner.
Okay.
The main thing is that to let that because sheep manure and cow manure are almost the same because they go through like 5 chambers in your
Okay.
stomach.
Yeah.
So you probably can get away with using it like less than a year, like say one winter,
Oh, okay.
letting it wash out all the urea, which is the urine. And then you're able to till that in a little bit faster too. It's just that the quantity, or not the quantity, the quantity is the amount that you would need. You compared to a cow pie, it's a lot smaller, so you need just a little bit more.
Okay, so when I do spread it in the field, then I shouldn't make it like really thick. It should just be kind of spread out thin.
It's gonna depend. Really, it is. Are you gonna do like row crops, or are you just planting for
Probably just
like a
do
forest?
row crops. So I'm thinking that I might just
Okay.
like use maybe a shovel and just throw them into holes and just get it ready for next year. Even though it's been sitting.
Yeah,
there
you can
now
do
for-
that definitely.
Okay. And should I
Or
chill
even
it?
like a
chill
couple
it
of
in
shovelfuls and at least
one?
mix it.
Okay.
You got really sandy soil, right?
Sandy loamy. So
Sandy
it's
soil?
yeah.
Okay. You can even put that on probably in a month or two, or probably even
Okay.
less than that. And
Well,
just
we
leave it
planted this
for
year, but we
until
didn't.
next
It
year.
didn't do good. Only because I
Okay.
kind of neglected it due to personal reasons. My dad passed, so it
Okay.
was kind of a little, and we just kind of forgot about our field. And I know my brother was the only one that kept telling me, "You need to get down there," and I'm like, "Oh gosh." But yeah, but I did notice though that in some of those areas, in the salmon loamy area, I could see that the soil was really, really good. So, but there's other areas too where the soil is very hard, and you could tell that we couldn't even we don't have like a tractor, so we do manual planting using a hoe. So some
Yeah.
areas, yeah, were really compact. So I'm gonna have to probably do add something there to break up that soil and try for next year. And usually we just do like the whole cornfield, but I think this year what I'm going to do is I'm just going to section them off so we can just focus on certain areas and plant instead of just planting the whole field like I used to.
Yeah, you can do that if you can plant something with a deep root.
Yeah.
The one thing that comes to mind is alfalfa, but not in your situation. If you can find a crop that has a deep root that digs way in there to break up that soil, that'd be really good.
Clover. I know
I'll come up
clover.
with something.
Yeah, I know clover's been really
Yeah.
getting promoted for cover crop, but I don't know how good it would do out here.
There was another one too.
What was the other one that
I'm
I
trying to
seen?
think of it. But yeah, you can definitely focus on certain areas. If you section off your field, and then that's how you can get your crop rotation going.
Yeah.
Year one, we use this section. We're gonna work on this next section. Plant corn, plant beans, rebuild the soil, adding compost. Probably you can do that every year, really. So, sheep manure. One thing I will point out, even on your composting, is be cautious of horse manure, especially if the people that own those horses deworm their animals, because that deworming agent that they use can have an effect on the earthworms.
Oh, wow.
Especially if it's like a close proximity time that doesn't have time to leach out, like say for 90 days.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Although I don't think there would be horse manure in the piles that we have. All right, that's awesome. Good information.
There are deworming agents for sheep too, so but that would probably go through them within like 3 months. But then that I'm not gonna say it can affect the manure, but if you let it at least cycle over a winter, you should be okay by the spring.
Okay, that'll work. Awesome. So Sharon, do you have any more questions? It looks like you and I are the only two that are on here left. You're good?
I don't have any more, but I would like to try that thermo composting. From what I was told at this one training at Pete's Farm, that all the chemicals that are used on the animals, like the 8-way and all this other stuff, that dewormer, it's supposed to, like, when they do the thermo composting, I think they were saying that it's supposed to get rid of that also. I don't know how. I mean, it seems like it would just stay in there. But maybe just burning it out or cooking it out. Do you think that would happen, Bryan?
Yeah, but you have to make sure that you're over that at that 100-degree temperature. And it has to be a constant temperature.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna try it, but I don't have sheep. I don't know where to get the manure. Probably could run to Indian Wells and get some of Sadie's manure.
Yeah, you can.
There's some there. There are some old sheep pens. If you can find an old sheep pen that somebody has,
Yeah.
and it's just been sitting there for a number of years. There are some people that actually have planted right into an old sheep manure pile.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Instead of going down to the cornfield, which is a walk from here, we have an area where we used to have sheep, and I was telling my family, I said, let's clear the whole thing out and let's just do our gardening there with our vegetables like our squash and melons and zucchini instead of walking to the field, because when you pack it up, then you have to come uphill to unload when you get home, and by the time you're over here, you're like a sheep that had just run home from like 2 or 3 miles. So it's a distance. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. And
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
Brian.
not a
mhm.
problem.
And like I told you, we'll probably go ahead and post this on our webinars and our Facebook and YouTube. So that's what we're going to be doing. And I'll share it with you when we're done. Or either find us on NAPS,
Okay, that sounds good.
Arizona NAPS 7. That's where we're at. So you could check out our site. And we have a lot of videos there that are already posted from prior work that Sharon has done. And then from the videos that we've put together on all our webinars. So, okay then. Well, thank you so much.